So welcome back to TNTV, where today we're really following on from last week. Last week, if you didn't get to watch it, was about who's the leader in your relationship. So it's probably good if you turn this off if you didn't watch it and watch that one first, because today we're going to be talking about how your interaction together affects the children that are either present in your life, present in your previous relationships, or maybe not present yet and going to pop up in the future. So of course you're here with myself, Tony V, and the incredible and amazing, as always, just had the hair done, looks great, doesn't she? Nicki V.
Yes, hello. And as Tony said, you know, this is specifically for you if you've got children anywhere around you in your life, because we did a live event last weekend. We had about 6 or was it 7 couples, and each individual couple had a different situation.
Absolutely.
There was, you know, blended families, grown-up children, grandchildren, young children. Everything that we said last week applies to that, and that's why we've followed on from last week. So as Tony said, last week was about who's going to be the leader, and remember that the most important thing is that for the best intimacy, for the most intimacy, for improved intimacy, and that's just not in the bedroom, that's for the whole of your life, the best way to interact is where, yes, of course, you discuss the boundaries and the rules and the things that go on in your house, including with the kids or with, you know, with other children if they don't live with you. And the most healthy ways for a healthy, masculine, green man to discuss it with his woman, but she supports him in his decisions. So I always go, before you switch off, you know, you must, as Tony says, you must go back and listen to the other videos, because this is all about being healthy and understanding each other's needs. And of course, that's why it's so critical for the children to have consistency and have an understanding of what the rules and the boundaries are, so that they actually, you know, the mother and the father, or the people that are taking care of the children, are actually, you know, following through on what they've agreed and taking those fantastic roles of kind of leader and supporter.
Yeah, now look, some of our views, as you will know already if you've watched any of our videos, are somewhat contentious. And, you know, look, children are so important. Look, they are everything. Without the children, the human race is going to die off, basically. So our children are the future, and there is nothing, in my view, more important. Now, today, of course, well, look, let me just go into the philosophy of our teaching. Where does it come from? Look, there are 2 buckets of information, as I always say. One is a bunch of strategies, which tend to be head stuff, logical, practical, worked out by intellectual people. So look, the whole education system, for example, is based on a strategy. It's a moving feast, of course, and notice how they're always trying to change it, and there's many debates on it and stuff like that. But your children are likely to be in the mix there, unless you've chosen to be one of the odd people, odd in the nice way, not odd in a silly way, that maybe have opted for something completely different, you know, education at home, or there are some, you know, unusual ways to educate your child outside of the main system. But look, most of it is a strategy. And
actually, really, really importantly, whatever behaviour you're experiencing with your children is going to be a direct result of the strategies and the rules and boundaries you've had already.
Absolutely.
Now, we could spend ages and ages now talking about what we believe is a healthy way to bring up children or to have children around you, but actually we've gone like chunked right up, because the other part of our philosophy, which Tony's now going to, you know, give you more understanding of, which is the wisdom, has a philosophy which will help you whatever the issue is and whatever the situation is that you have with children around you.
Indeed. So these teachings much more come from what we call the wisdom bucket. So it's sort of ancient wisdom, the part of us that tends to, well, it's there, but for the most part, it's like switched off. So we help people switch it on, and it's like they then access part of them that they didn't otherwise know was there. Now, one of the downsides of just using the strategy bucket is, for example, in this world, everything gets labelled. Everything gets a label. And certainly in the Western world, you've seen massive cases of AD, whatever they call it. They've given children that are a little bit difficult to control or out of control, they've now given them this label, and there's whole studies go on. Some children have been pumped full of drugs to solve that problem, whereas actually, how would it be? The answer to all of this lays in the wisdom bucket. So we're going to be sharing some wisdom with you now, which actually does come along with a bit of science, but it's primarily from the wisdom bucket.
Yeah, and just to give a quick example, we were working with a children's home in Kuala Lumpur some years ago, and what was amazing, we were teaching them some philosophies of how to interact with the children, not just the parents but the carers and the people that were in the home. And these were mentally and physically challenged children who were in this home for that purpose. It was like we already had a label put on them, but what we noticed is that their behavior was a complete reflection of their parents' behaviour. Absolutely, without exception.
And the system
yeah.
that they found themselves in. So, look, breaking free of the system is not what we're suggesting. What we're suggesting, you can make much more of the system for your children by looking at it with the wisdom teaching switched on. So, let's share that wisdom now. What is it? So, look, Nicki said we're going to chunk right up. That means we're going to look very globally and say, okay, so what's the number one thing a child needs, or potentially wants as well? Needs and wants slightly different. But what do you think it is? Just 2 seconds, go, what does every child need? And the answer truthfully is that they need to be feeling the feeling of love. They need to feel the feeling of love. That is the number one need of your child. So just as you hear that, maybe just go to yourself, look, you see, there's red love, as we call it, that's strategy, unhealthy love, and then there's green wisdom love. This same word in these two boxes, in these two contexts, have a completely different meaning. Okay, so in the strategy bucket, love, the word love means trying to get love from outside of ourselves, so trying to get somebody to love us. And often in a parent situation, I have to say, as I have observed hundreds of parents as we work together, you can fall into the unhealthy red strategy love as a parent by seemingly trying to get love from your child. So you've got what we would call an unhealthy relationship. The child is trying to get love from you. So think about your parent. Did you ever try to get your parent to love you? Oh my gosh, have we helped hundreds of people where they felt that their parents didn't love them. So they're trying to get love from their parents, and sometimes that's reciprocated. The parents, they're sort of utilising the child to get love back for themselves. This is all strategy, this is all head stuff, this is all ego stuff, and this has consequences. Look, there is no right or wrong, it just has consequences. So if your child is not operating in a happy, joyous, loving way most of the time, look, even the best child that's green as green can be is gonna sometimes, have a little bit of a downer. But, just look at the environment of the child from the viewpoint of their emotionality. How stable is their emotionality? If it's not stable, they seem consistently unhappy, then there's massively something that you can do. And of course, the more children you have, you see, if you have a single child, it's a different ball game than if you have 2 children. Different ball game to if you have 3 children. Everything changes as more children are in your vicinity. So that's very fascinating.
And of course, and nowadays with so many divorces, as we often talk about the statistics, this is often the case where you have you get together in an intimate relationship and then you have children from previous relationships. This sort of this multiplies up the challenges. Yes. And as Tony said, the way you can tell whether you need to find a new way, and I would basically say this wisdom that we're now going to share with you made such a massive difference to me and my son. It's made such a massive difference to me with my grandchildren because it's so fundamentally simple and it's the only thing you have to remember. Yeah. So if you have any behavioural issues that you go, okay, I wish they wouldn't behave like that, I find it difficult to get them to go to bed or get them to get them to behave, or if they're teenagers, get them to come home, or whatever that is, whatever the situation is. So you don't need to think about the situation. This philosophy, this wisdom, will give you a key reason why it's happening, and secondly, something that you need to work on.
Yeah, so look, we've just described red love, which is the trying to get love. That could be you trying to get it from your child, you're trying to get it from you, or you can sometimes, another strategy is to give love to try and get it back. But of course the challenge with that is when it gets withheld, whoa, that feels terrible. So what's the green love? What does love mean in the green bucket, or the wisdom bucket as we sometimes refer it to? So love in this bucket is more internal. Now look, love, how would it be, is just a chemistry. It's just a chemistry. And ultimately, of course, when two people are doing red love, they get a chemistry, a mix of chemistry, which they feel good when there's a great connection, and they feel not good when there's not a great connection. So they feel a sense of love and connection when it's great, but a feeling of loss when it's not great. Now in the green world, of course, what happens is you're not stuck on getting love from them, because what you realise is that you have got the love chemistry inside of you and that you can actually make it yourself. You just have to turn it on. There is like a switch that turns on the chemistry of love, yeah? And how you describe it is difficult because there's less words over here to describe it, but there'll be in your environment, in your child, in your house, there'll be peace, there'll be calm, there'll be joy, there'll be happiness. There'll be a feeling of fulfillment in your house. All of these things are akin to green love. So if that doesn't describe your house, and you use words like feels a bit out of control, it maybe could feel a bit angry or frustrating environment, we're not all getting on, that's much more red. So that's how you'd identify. So the green wisdom world is much more calm and loving, and it's easy if you're in a loving state and your partner's in a loving state for you to share that great love, and then your children grow up experiencing that. So that becomes the norm for them. So one thing we do, I just thought about the label in the house thing.
Oh, yes.
You know, this is a great exercise. I've done this with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, but it's quite a useful thing to do. So it's good to close your eyes to do this. It's a bit of a weird thing on a film, but just close your eyes for a second and just go, okay, if I was to go and stand over the road to my house, wherever you live, just look at the front door, look at the house, the windows, roof, however it looks, garden if you got one, just look at it and just imagine for a moment there was a sign over the door, and on that sign there were two words, or maybe one, maybe three, you know, there's no rules, just a small amount of words that describe the energy that's inside of that house. Just think about it for a second. Just write on that sign what energy is inside that house, if you had to describe what it felt like. Now, trust you've got a word or two or three, whatever that is. Now, my experience definitely has been that 8 out of 10 people, I've done a bit of measuring, 8 out of 10 people write something a bit red on there, a bit dark, low energy stuff, low emotionality, that sort of stuff. And only 2 out of 10 write something really nice on it, like it's loving, peaceful, calm, those sorts of words. So it's, you know, you are where you are. Look, if you've written something that's a bit darker on there, then it is what it is. But then you have to ask yourself, so is that energy? Because your child or children are living in that energy. So do they display that energy? And the answer's most likely to be yes. Do you feel that energy in your body? The answer's most likely to be yes. Where did that energy come from? Well, often it came from your childhood home. You can do the same thing with your childhood home. Have a wander around it with your eyes closed and go, what energy was in that house? And I almost guarantee it's going to be something similar. There's going to be some, even though sometimes it's hard to see. So all of this is important. And what we want to do is create the energy of peace, calm and love for your child to grow up in. So there's a bit of a formula, which is an interesting way to look at this. If indeed you're going, well, look, my words look a bit on the dark side. How do I do this? How do I switch this love switch on? Tell me how. Tell me how to do it, yeah? So we have this, what we call the triangular formula, yeah? And all you do is actually quite simple. And Nicki said at the beginning, this is really, really important, that the adults need to be in a green place. So remember, and this is why we're encouraging you to go back to last week's video, the man needs to be the leader, okay? But he needs to be green in himself. If he's in red energy, the man's in red energy, and he's not in control of the situation, then this is not going to be great for the kids. So this is why, you know, when I always say, if you've ever watched like the Dog Whisperer program, what's his, I'm forgetting his name now, begins with a C. Caesar, yeah. You know, like, as you watch that program, there's one thing and one thing only to notice. And that is that the problem is never the dog. It's never the dog, it's always the owners. Always the owners. If you watch, he's training the owner. He does a few bits with the dog, but he trains the owner how to get into a better place. And it's the same, it's the same. So it's important when we're doing this exercise that the man is at least working on getting more green, and then he's also what we call blue. In other words, he's being solid and certain in himself as a man and is the leader of the house. And that the woman just described that.
Yes, I think it's very important that what we're talking about when Tony's mentioned this triangle thing is we're going to explain to you is that you two are part of that triangle, and the whole energy of the house and the home, and if children are away from home, when they come back, the whole energy, whatever's written over your front door, will be massively affected by the energy between you two. And so what we always ask, if you imagine this triangle, this actually comes from the work of a fantastic woman called Chloe Madonis, and she actually is a world leading expert on family dynamics, and she teaches lots of really great stuff, but this is what we took away from it, and we have used this with hundreds of couples. And basically you look at it as a triangle like that. Okay, and you put the child's name, so take one of your children or one of the children that you're responsible for in the middle. And as Tony said, what they're looking for is unconditional love. Okay, they're looking to be an environment of unconditional love, not that they're trying to give it or guess it, they're looking to be in an environment. Now, part of that triangle, we always draw it with, the child at the top of the triangle. Okay, and then we ask, look, what's the connection? What's the energy on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being it's awful and 10 being it's fantastic, between the mother or the female in the relationship, because it may be stepmother or grandmother or whatever, the female in the relationship and the child. What's that number between 0 and 10, 0 being awful and 10 being great energy? And then the child and the father or the grandfather or the male in that relationship, what's the number there? And obviously, if you can just answer that question, take one of the children and just go, what's the connection with the mother, and what's the connection with the father or the male or the female? What number? 0 being awful, 10 being great. The thing that you can have the most impact in is the other part of the triangle, the bottom part of the triangle between the man and the woman. And as Tony said, this whole energy, the creating of, the setting of the energy of this family, however, let's be honest, disjointed that family can sometimes be, remains with the man as the leader, as Tony said, in a healthy, loving way, that he sort of, does what he does to set this energy. And the woman takes the role of the person who supports him in that energy setting exercise. And of course, the big byproduct to all this is that the relationship between the man and the woman, whatever that number is, remember 0 is awful and 10 is fantastic, whatever that number is, by taking that leader role and the woman taking that support role, that number can be improved. And then you take, for looking from the child, as soon as the relationship between the man and the woman gets better and the energy between them is increased, that child automatically, without anything else having to happen, is in different energy. And therefore, actually, the connection and the energetic connection between the child or the junior person and the male and the female also. So what you have actually, just to sort of tidy up on that, is you start off with 3 numbers, a scale of 0 to 10 on the relationship on each side of the triangle, and that will be out of 30. And we've come across numbers?
I'll tell you.
Low, like
so
in the single figures.
Yeah, so, for me, you've got these 3 numbers, and the maximum you can score is 30. And the nearer you are to 30, the more your relationship of the family is going to be green. It's absolutely, you are going to be describing this as calm, joyous, caring, loving, beautiful experience of life for everybody, yeah? But the lower your number, the lower the number, the more chaotic it's going to be. So the word chaos often comes up, children out of control. But what you'll notice is that the relationship with the parents is normally not doing great, and the relationship with one of the parents and the child is often not doing great. And then you've got often one party
Yes.
has got a very strong relationship, sometimes an unhealthy relationship. So remember, it's important that before we do anything here with the triangles, that we understand that the woman needs to be healthy. She needs to be in a beautiful pink, feminine, healthy energy, which is then green in itself. And then the man's got to be in his blue male energy, and he has to be green. This is what creates a 10 on the bottom line. Now, if that doesn't describe you, then you've got some work to do, because your child is going to be a reflection, an absolute reflection of the quality of this relationship, which will come back to haunt them later in life. Because I can tell you now that we have done this with hundreds of couples, and what we all often do is go back to their parents. So if you go to your parents and you be the child and score yourself, if you had a low score with one of or both of your parents and your parents had a low score, this will be what you're experiencing most likely. Some of that you will carry forward into your own relationship. So that's why we call this like lifelong learning. This is a lifestyle change. This is not a top tip. This is not how you control your child. Because look, you controlling human beings, whether they're little or large, is basically impossible. Some person said, didn't they, out for fun, said, controlling humans is like trying to control cats. That it's just not possible. But think about it. If you are trying to control the other two parts of your triangle, namely one of your children or your partner, if you're trying to get them to do what you want to do, that's where your challenges lie. The only thing that's important to control is your own emotionality. You get yourself in a calm, loving, beautiful place, then your energy is reflected to these other people, and suddenly the score on your triangle goes up and your child has a much better experience of life, for life,
Yes, and just actually you touched on something there which I feel like I really want to, especially for the women, is that very often when we've done this exercise with couples, sometimes the women have a 10 out of 10 relationship with the child.
Yes,
and then
absolutely.
She has a poor relationship with her man, and often the man will have a poor relationship with that particular child. And in those cases, what we observe, and this is sometimes hard for the parents to take if we are going and doing some time in the house, because as you know, we do the thing where we go and live with people for a weekend, and often the reason why we go and live with them rather than come to us is because they've got children, and that's more appropriate. And therefore we watch and see basically the children running the house, ruling the house. And it's because the parents, the children are out of control, because let's be honest, whatever behaviour the children are doing will be a direct reflection of what the parents or what the people that are caring for them do.
Yes.
So we see that so often, and that comes from having an unhealthily over connection with a child, and that puts the other things out of kilter. So as Tony said, the very first thing, and I know this sounds like saying the obvious, but the very first thing you have to do as individuals, as a man and the woman, is to be working on your own energy and make sure that if you've recognized that the sign over the door it's not the sign you would want it to be, and maybe you've recognized that that's the same sign as you were brought up with, and that now you're having a realization right now that you need to do something to turn that energy dial up, as we have often said in many of our other our videos. And that then when we as individuals, as a woman and a man, with the man clearly as the leader and the woman as the supporter, that means that your relationship starts to become the most important thing, because your relationship creates the energy of the house. Indeed. And therefore the children are massively benefit. And here's the thing which makes my heart sing, is to think that as they then, as our children have become parents themselves, that they begin to demonstrate that to their children, and then you have it an ongoing thing. Because of course the other alternative is that it continues generation after generation after generation. Low energy, upset, difficult, and as Tony said, chaotic homes where children learn about chaos and disconnection.
Indeed, indeed. So there you go, on speed, a little bit of sharing of the wisdom teaching of how a family can operate in a green, loving way. If you've got any questions,
Yes,
somewhere
please.
underneath, if you're on our website watching this, there's a box, please feel free to ask away. We answer all those questions personally, and they're completely confidential as well. If you're watching on YouTube, there is a button underneath you can click, and it'll take you to that page where you can too ask your questions. So I appreciate that may be very contentious and you may not be agreeing with us. If you don't agree with us, please write in too. We're happy to share. Sometimes we do it on speed, and some aspects get left out, so that's okay. We understand that, so we're happy to share and talk to you all the more. And also, don't forget to hit the weekend or the couples support weekend button or the emergency support button, because there's some great help on there, which is like instant. You could be doing it tonight. So look, we are here to support you, however that might look. So that's it from us today. So from me, Tony V, and the amazing, beautiful green and pink Nicki V,
Do my best.
we'll see you next week. Bye for now.